Hello and welcome to the Organic Wormhole Episode 9. Mr. Medically Fit Smiley's Gardens, the Pharmacy Seed Network. Carlton, how you boys
Hello and
doing?
welcome.
Doing fantastic.
Already? Holy shit, man. We're almost in double digits.
I know it. I couldn't believe it myself when I was looking at it today. I was like, wow, that went by fast.
I hit the wrong button again. We love the Eagles. Yeah.
So
So
easy.
welcome to another wormhole, man. Appreciate
So
it
easy
for
to
jumping
do
in. I don't have chat up yet, so I'm not seeing it, but I hope some of the other panel members are pulling it up. So when I come off mute, they're ready to talk too. But appreciate everybody coming out Friday. We're kind of jambled up here this start of this, but it's gonna be good, I guess. How you doing this week, man? Yeah, so I'm not seeing it, but I hope
I'm
someone
good.
panel
I'm
members.
good.
So when I come off mute, they're ready to talk. Sorry.
Yep. So yeah, there we go. Okay. No, I'm good. A lot of things going on. Got my plants. They're about day 14-ish in flower. No, less than that. 12 days in flower. And you should see the size and buttons already developing on these plants that they got transplanted into 15-gallon pots in the last of the super soil. And it's pretty much just been watering. I did a little bit of inoculant biologicals, just because it's so far into there that I need to kind of re-amend. And so, but I'm not trying to like do any teas this round, just water and some sugar and biologicals, and that's it. It's kind of what's going on.
Dig it, man.
And then the Bakashi. I made some Bakashi.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun. If you guys haven't seen the video, I've got it on my channel. Kind of how to do it yourself. And we use Brandon Russ, my Micro Plus from Bakashi Earthworks instead of EM1. And so, yeah, it's ready to go in buckets. It's been about 6 days now, and it's kind of a process on how it dries out because as I have it laid out to kind of dry, I'll still find pockets of really moist Bakashi brand. And so I need to get in there and kind of break it up so it's not drying and hardening together.
Yeah.
So pretty fun, pretty interesting stuff I've been playing around with.
It's new with you, Carlton.
Oh, what's going on with me? Let's see. I've been hammering away releasing a regenerative cover cropping regenerative ag school series that I started this year. So I've been finishing up all the final edits on that, and I just finished up a promo on that tonight. So I've been very busy with that. Working the regular job, trying to hammer the hours, keep the bills paid, and then in the lab, I've been starting seeds. I started some of the Smiley stuff, some testers he sent me, some strawberry Kush times citrus cookies, I think it was. So I got a few of those in, 6 of those in actually. And let's see, I took some clones of some Fire 99 Black Lime Reserve, some clones of some Lemon Drizzle, and some clones of some Main Zone Blueberry S3. And I got several different seeds inbound from friends, and I just received a bunch of really awesome seeds today. Some chocolate, some Escobar chocolate rain, and a bunch of other really cool stuff. I'm at a point where I have so many seeds now. I'm like, I got like 6 years ahead of me, and I just know there's a flood coming in still. And I'm like, here we are. We're like up against that wall again. I can only do so many at a time. That's the frustrating part, man. I wish I had 30 factories of testers. I could just be like, here, guys, just play. They're fucking awesome genetics.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. Let me know what you find. I'm curious. So that's my gig.
Right on. Is just a legal thing? That number there, that 6 years, because as you know, numbers was what holding me back. I always thought that Oklahoma was the gold mine, unlimited plant count. Move there and start just open the case and start wetting shit. You know what I mean? So if plant count were different, would it be 6 years, or would you be like, let it rain? Let's see what we find. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if plant count were different, no, I wouldn't even fuck around. Like the 10 by 10 lab would be like the start for seedlings, and I'd wait until the season was ready for me to start seedlings, go right outdoor and go huge, right? And then I'd be like, yeah, let's try a bunch of different strains and test a bunch of different blocks, and then pick out what's good out of that, and like really fuck around. I'd love to have, 100 of each strain out there, or 1,000 of each strain. But the space and the time and energy it takes to do that is like, it's probably a good thing that there are plant limits. God knows if I had unlimited, I look at what I did with tomatoes, right? Like I started out with like, I just want like a good crimson beefsteak for sandwiches. Next thing I know, I got a 90-foot row and I'm selling fucking tomatoes, like if I did that with weed, as enthusiastic as I am about it and as passionate as I am about it, forget about it, dude. Like I'd never sleep. I'd probably kill myself, but it would be a fun way to die.
Right on, right on. Me myself, I've been juggling some things around and playing with the few girls I've got going, trying to get some light lit up behind me. I'm trying to now decide because the girls where they are now on the other side of this wall, it's kind of a cold area, and they've it has worked out okay back there because of the simple fact that I've been able to keep that light on 24 hours a day and keep that space somewhat extra warm with that fixture and keeping that tent closed, which I don't necessarily like. We're talking about, CO2 exchange and stuff like that, especially when I've got them packed in there like that. I don't, that's even more critical for that door to be open to get some kind of movement in there. I really believe that excess leaf, bushy growths, and just non-air movement is like you guys have all wore long johns at one point. You know what I mean? If you get that cold stuck in there, it's fucking stuck in there. You know what I mean? So if them girls get cold and there's no air movement, that cold air gets fucking stuck in the center of that plant, in the leaves, in the fucking middle of that canopy, and it really stagnates the growth. So I've been lucky enough to, get by where it's at now. So, but now I want to start pushing some flower. Now temperature's the fact. Now I'm like, so I've been posed today. Now, do I want to put the flower girls behind me in a little bit warmer space and try to continue the veg I've got going out here now? Okay, I do want a flower here. Now I want to put a bigger light there than I had anticipated on. Now I'm like, what's running all on that fucking fuse? You know what I mean? Fuck, fridge is on that fucking fuse. Now, fuck, what am I going to do? Is there a trade off? I might move the fridge.
You know what the best trade-off though is when you know an electrician that you can call and say, hey, I need a couple circuits. Can you come throw them in?
Yeah, true that, true that. That's one of the bitches about that too, is all this paneling. It's not easy to just you're not just bumping a hole in the wall and fucking going, yeah, I'm gonna mud that in, it's gonna be fixed. Access getting into the walls, run some good wire. You're a good electrician. You might be able to fish some shit. I mean, that's not me. I'm gonna open it up and get at it, guy myself. But
Yeah, I'm pretty good at fishing some shit, fishing some walls and attics, and
I was gonna say, man,
20 plus years. So
I have wired some of my own breakers many times, man, because it was just like I can't afford an electrician. I can't have somebody even know about this to begin with. Like this is like there's only one way to do this. So, and I had lots of experience around electronic. My dad worked for an electrician, and like I'm very familiar with it, so I know how to be safe with it. But yeah, that's a skill to have if you're a grower for sure.
oh yeah.
so that's kind of where I'm at. Is trying to figure out what I'm gonna flip around to make some extra room to make that extra happen. Because yeah, it's time to flower. I'd like to keep the process going, get back into somewhat of a perpetual, you know, it's way past due. So I'm just trying to figure out what I've got going back there. It's pretty much where I've been at, other than running around, chasing around the running stuff, like that. I did pick up a sponsor today. I wanna, if you guys don't mind, throw that out there real quick. Today I picked up 24/7 Fitness, the gym in here, Holton Lake. I picked them up as a sponsor to help make this happen. And well, I've got three so far. If you guys, I'll throw them all out there. You guys don't mind. Ultimate Fitness, thank you. And Holton Lake Chamber of Commerce, and again the gym, all throwing their way support behind me so far on this. Well, gym or running a journey. But other than that, that's where I'm at. Looking forward to hanging out and talking some organics with you guys this evening, anyway.
So what were we talking about just a little bit ago? Nitrites, nitrates, amino acids, like how much energy is expended by the plant trying to change one form to another versus unit using like amino acids, Carlton?
Yeah. So I'm taking there's a regenerative ag course on kindharvest.ag. And part of that course is a whole talk on EH and pH. So we always talk about pH here in the cannabis world and soils in general, right? But one thing we don't talk about a lot is EH. So pH stands for potential hydrogen. That has to do with charge. And EH has more to do with oxidation and reduction. And so this is a very important point as it regards to soils, as it regards to plants, as it regards to the state of soils, as it regards to the biology that surrounds the states of those soils. And then more specifically, as it regards the difference between anionic nutrients and microbial metabolites. But let's just tear that apart for a second.
So I just would word it a little different, but the pH is an inverse measure of protons, and EH is an inverse measure of electrons. So it's the energy portion of it, because that does kind of, that's the difference there. They do play together and they affect each other somewhat, but that's the difference. And those electrons are the energy source of what you're getting. So that's where like oxidation and reduction was such a crazy wormhole for a minute, and then you started hearing it in different scenarios, and the realization is that when something is being reduced, energy is being put into it, and when something is being oxidized, energy is being taken or harvested from it, and it breaks it down into everything. So the the whole thing with photosynthesis, there's an electron transfer chain that's going on to build that and reduce that energy. That sugar or carbohydrate that's producing has stored energy in it, and that's what feeds everything, right? But everything's got to oxidize that. So all these oxidation reduction reactions happen all the way through all the biology, all the microbiology in the soil, through the plant cells, all that. It's how that energy is getting transferred in the cell and in the individual itself.
I couldn't have said that any better, Smiley. You really illustrated that very well. Thank you for clarifying that, because I was not painting a great picture of that. But yeah, so EHPH. So so that's another factor to consider, right? So at the end of all of that, to boil this all down to something simpler, right? There's a very simple difference between different types of nitrogen that a plant uptakes, and it ultimately affects how efficient the plant can conduct photosynthesis and how much energy it has to send out in the form of converting one form of nitrogen to another form that it can then assimilate and use, versus a form of nitrogen that it can assimilate directly. And so that's part of why we talk about microbial metabolites, and we talk about amino acids, because those are already pre-assembled compounds that a plant can absorb, and then it doesn't have to assemble all those little pieces to create an amino acid. It has that whole compound. Think of building, say, a house, right? You know, you can get a modular house and then just throw like the roof on and throw the pieces together, or you can build a house from scratch. How much longer does it take to build it from scratch, and how much more energy is involved for you to do so? Same concept applies here. So that's the introduction to where we're going tonight.
So
The interesting interplay that I guess you know, it's not like just a discussion on like the water table and like field capacity of a soil. But when you're like, my understanding of that field capacity is when like one drop's going to go in the media, one drop's going to come out, type of thing. It's at its limit of what it can hold, which would indicate that there's a lot of airspace that's taken up in that. So that environment tends to be in an anaerobic, and that's going to drive that nitrogen cycling in a way that's going to be oxidizing that nitrogen and taking energy away. So as that soil is going to dry out, that nitrogen cycle will shift in an aerobic soil to become a more reduced form of that, which it does. The plants do need a balance of the both, so there's that too, and they do need to uptake the both. But it's just one thing that I guess was the light bulb moment for me, was like realizing that that's always happening. It's just kind of dependent on how that water cycle is through that media as well. You know?
Yeah, and let me paint that a little more. So you could really look at that plant, soil, water, sun interaction and photosynthesis interaction as like the plant is like an antenna and a transducer, and it's constantly reducing energy out of the sun to the soil, and you know, pulling nutrition and water, and it's basically that's the exchange site between the soil and the sun, right? So it's pulling energy from the sun, using that energy to charge that soil, and then that microbiology is feeding back to that plant and charging energy back. Really beautiful process.
So what are some of the nitrites that we might be putting in our soils and not realizing it? Because I know, like when we're doing compost, if some of the material is not fully broken down, then we're definitely adding to it. I know certain manures, if they're not properly broken down or time, may have some nitrites to it.
Well, I guess I would maybe say something that might shock you both, but even so this wave or idea of like, okay, we're gonna pour amino acids into the soil and we're gonna water in nitrogen this way, right? And then I get the concept, okay, this amino acid is already formed, it's reduced, it took energy to make that amino acid, it's already done it. And the plant is capable of absorbing this, right? However, in reality, when you start to pour that in, it is majority of that is getting translated into that soil food web. And what's happening in that soil food web is going to be primarily based on where that water level is at, where the moisture content is. So that's, you know what I mean? There's like this whole like, I guess 3D kind of look at some of it, but it's like, yes, I'm intentionally watering in this, but what's really happening to it once it hits that soil surface? Is it majority getting absorbed by the plant, or is it really getting cycled through the microbiome of the soil and becoming part of that?
One thing I'll say that becomes increasingly clear every level of regenerative agriculture that I've discovered so far is that the more we look at this and the more we study this system, the more we find it seems like we're feeding the soil more than the plants, you know, and it seems like we're interacting with the soil more than the plants. We think we're feeding the plants, but I don't know that we are. I think we're doing more for soil than we are for plants, and the plants are just acting as an interface. Hello, welcome.
What's going on, Icy? Good to see you, brother.
How's
I
everybody?
was hoping you'd jump in one of these, man. I know you're a big organic head, so
Nice to
love
see.
it.
Yeah. Nice to see you in here.
Yeah, it's what gets me interested, and you know, it's it's the passion. it's a lifestyle. Once you get into it, it becomes a lifestyle. I didn't mean to interrupt you. All carry on.
Oh man, we was talking nitrogen cycling or some shit there. So
Talking about some of the different accidental sources of nitrates and nitrites that we're putting into our soils.
So go ahead and
Yeah.
throw your 2 cents down. We'd love to hear from you.
Well, atmospheric nitrogen is, it's obviously the big one, with cover crops and everything else, and nitrogen fixing bacteria, all these sort of things. We're having a little bit of a nitrogen input into our systems. So technically, we don't need to go heavy on the nitrogen. We need to enhance all the cover crops. It's not just nitrogen that we can get from the cover crops. There's lots of other things that they can pull out of the atmosphere as well. It's I love the idea of green manure. If you can grow, you select a cover crop that provides all the nutrition you need, and then you're closing your system down. And yeah, I've never really got into it that far, but I did have a good old look at some what the industry calls green manure. You can find all the information you want as far as good companion plants, bad companion plants, attractors, fumigators, all sorts of different things from your cover crops.
Yeah. You mentioned other stuff from the atmosphere. I think most people don't realize you could pull pretty much all the nitrogen you want from the atmosphere if you get the biology right. There's way more nitrogen fixers besides the typical rhizophagy bacteria that we're normally aware of, and like beans and like legumes, right? There are many others, and it can actually exist on the leaf surface, right on the phytoplane, and directly fix nitrogen to the leaf. So that's something to consider. And you mentioned other things in the atmosphere. Sulfur is one of those. And in fact, since they changed EPA regulations in the late 70s, the amount of sulfur farmers have to put on their fields has actually gone up, because sulfur helps break calcium and supplies that whole biochemical sequence of nutrition. You start with silicon and activate calcium and throw on so on through boron and on through. So just to paint your point out a little more.
Nearly every, if you was to, be adding something like CalMag, you might not be aware of it, but it's going to come along with a little bit of nitrogen or ammonia nitrogen in with it. Most of the products do have a little blend, a bit of iron or goes in there with it as well.
All right, was there another guest that we didn't for tonight? We have one. I'm just asking.
I know, man.
If we got one, bring them in, I guess. I mean, sure.
Yeah, I mean, let's have a panel.
You guys,
Say, bring them in.
oh yeah, dude.
Oh, there we go. Josh is joining us now.
I didn't. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How you doing, Josh?
Welcome.
What's up, dudes? How's it going?
Good, man.
Good, man. We got our panel now.
Oh yeah.
I've been meaning to join you guys. It's just I usually have my kids right about now, so thanks for the invite, Eagle.
Yeah.
Anytime, man.
So, Josh, what are some of the accidental nitrites or nitrates that when you're making some soils you're putting in, and you realize later that, hey, I don't want to put this in my soil no more because the type of nitrogen source that it is? Do you have anything like that?
You mean like basically the inputs, but you're saying specifically nitrogen or nitrite that
Yeah.
I have used and gone, I don't want that in there anymore.
Yep.
I feel like that's kind of a personal answer. My answer will be personal and non-scientific is the way I'm going to give it, because I don't have any, I could spin off whatever, but I'm just going to tell you my experience in I don't like pickles. Fuck. I don't like neem. I don't fucking like neem. I don't like, there's things I don't like ethically, like blood meal, bone meal. There's things that I don't like ethically that I'm willing to swallow, like the fucking back guano.
So, Josh, let me rephrase it a little different because we were talking
Okay.
about nitrogen cycling, and I know you do aquaponics, which is going to deal in this a lot, right? Like in an aquarium, that's an anaerobic situation, and what's developing in there in that nitrogen cycle is the nitrites, right? I think I'm saying that
Well,
right.
it's a step process, right? So, like I was listening a little bit earlier, and my way of layman saying it and thinking about it is big shit, like big animals eat and consume and poop out, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And somewhere along the line, it becomes more and more and more plant available. And the smaller and more shits and eats that have happened, right? If you're following me, like, the whatever, the bear dies, the coyote eats it, nutrient cycling, right? The more that happens, the more complex and the more available it becomes for the plants. That's the bottom line. And along the way, you pick up benefits, but they may be unintentional. And in reality, I think you were saying TFSN. What you were saying was right on. And Smiley, like, we're overloading a lot of stuff, and it's taking a lot longer time to break down to become available. Is the reality? We're not feeding the plants really, unless there's a few products or systems that you can use to really break that down. That's why KNF is kind of cool, because it's a way to ferment or break down some things to make it more plant available. But I don't think it's actually 100% plant available. I don't know. I don't have a lab to look at the microscope and be like, oh yeah, every fucking piece got consumed, but it's all a trip too, because put that aside, like, the simple understanding of that, and now start talking about rhizophagy, microbes, farming microbes that live inside the plant. Like, you're like, what? There's so much going on. Like, the best way I think about it in talking with Elaine and folks that are smarter than me is it's a fucking war zone. It's like the most savage thing you can think of, where there's fucking, shitting, fighting, all that's happening, and you throw some neem meal in there, boom, it just gets, it's, what I mean? The plant's getting a little bit, and everybody else is eating, and then, I don't know. That's my lame answer. I think
It's
you guys already
almost,
said what I said. I just said it in a bro way.
it's almost like picture feeding a trout pool with like trout feed, right? And they just like churn the water, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's not really an answer, Smiley, but in the story that's told in the timeline of aquaponics, you drop fish food in, the fish eat it, the fish poop, they poop out ammonia. There's a microbial set that turns that ammonia into nitrite, and I might miss up the order. I don't actually remember. And then the other one turns it into nitrate, or vice versa. But they're separate microbial sets, as I understand, that are eating and shitting that stuff out. And then it finally becomes plant available. And in an aquaponics situation, it's, has most nutrients. There's a few that it lacks that don't come out of the fish.
And just to even relate that, like you say, there's different stages of that and phases of that. There's different bacteria that convert each phase of that, right? Different microbial communities, right? Bacteria. And then breaking science now, like in the last month, there's a new Dr. Brian something or other. He's talking about nitric oxide, and how people are using mouthwash and antibiotics and stuff, and how that's killing our natural bacteria in our mouth that converts nitric oxide. And that's part of why we're having so many vascular problems and heart health problems and blood flow and circulation and diabetic problems. So again, it ties back to those microbial.
What is nitric oxide? I mean, I hear those two words combining, obviously.
Vasodilator, basically. It feeds your endothelium system and relaxes it.
It drives where blood flows in the body, basically, is what it does. Yeah. And so like for example, Viagra, they use something called a PDE5 inhibitor, which is it's basically an inhibitor that prevents nitric oxide uptake by the body, because it's a very short-lived element in the body. And so what that does is inhibit uptake. So now you have more available nitric oxide, and that makes blood flow to wherever you want to send it easier to do. So same kind of concepts along the lines of plants, but in human bodies. But that same concept applies.
So it's not
Postbiotics.
even specific to the dick. It's just that you can choose to send it to the dick, right? By being horny.
Correct, exactly. It's about controlling blood flow and being.
Yeah.
As a human, you should be able to send blood flow where you need it in your body. You're an organism. You should be able to say, like,
So-
I need it in my head, I need it in my arm, I need it in whatever I'm doing.
Has that? I mean, I'm sure I can't be the.
And then what
Sorry, go
people
ahead.
take when they get a heart attack or whatever too. That's like heart attack.
Under the sun, that's nitrous oxide.
That's
they
nitrous
take
oxide. Yeah.
But it affects
Oh.
that system. Yes. Yeah, and
Yeah,
actually,
it's just-
Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, the world of postbiotics. You know, we're now finding out that the microorganisms are producing all these substances that are driving their plant signals as far as their defense systems, their protective compounds that the plants are going to produce. And the plants are actually sending out signals now to the microbes. They're actually changing the way, the behavior of the microbes. So 1 minute they could be farming one nutrient, then the plant sends out a signal and it switches the whole dynamics of the system, and then they start farming something else, especially if it's defense orientated as well. You know, that switch happens quite a lot. And that's really what I'm really interested in at the moment is putting compounds like flavonoids, polyphenols, all these things into the rhizosphere, and actually watching what the bacteria and everything else are going to just change and do for the plants. You put a little bit of research into it as well, you can actually target specific bacteria with specific compounds. And I love all this stuff. You know,
It's really cool.
With the living soil as well, this is so easy for us guys to achieve this sort of stuff.
So what you were talking about towards the beginning, ICNE, was like quorum sensing, where the plant and the biology is kind of communicating through each other to each other on like what different nutrients they need, or if they're being attacked by a pest or pathogen.
yeah.
I
John,
think there's a whole order. It's bigger than quorum sensing. There's a natural. There's some, you know, the creator, the life force, whatever it is. That's making the conscious decisions. You know. Also, I believe when we're taking part in it and we're observing it, we're having an effect as well. This is all part of it. You know, is the energy you put into it. We're all tied into it. It's all tied in and we're all connected. And yeah, when it all gels and it all flows and it all works together, it's amazing.
Let me throw this in. Sorry, I might be getting back to what you were kind of getting at earlier. Medically fit is, you know, when we as inexperienced gardeners put too much of a thing onto that space. How do you see those interactions playing out? I mean, I imagine it in my head they're getting, like, microorganisms are getting suffocated and saturated in just the same way we would be if we were filled with a room full of popcorn, you know, type thing, or whatever, fill in the blank. Like, what are your, I just throw that as a statement. What do you guys want to respond to that?
Oh, anybody want to?
I don't want to step on anybody. Yeah, I completely agree. I've noticed it in compost piles. I've noticed it in planters. I've noticed it in all kinds of stuff. I've made lots and lots of gardening mistakes, and boy, you know, some of the best lessons in those really just in the observation you gain from it. Definitely, like, I've seen my mom, I've tried to coach her for years on how to do a compost pile in a way that facilitates good composting. And she just won't. She sticks a cage around it, throws it all on top of the soil. The animals come and drag off bits and pieces. It sits there rotting, smelling like crap, never decays. And she wonders why she doesn't have compost. And I just, like, we go over this every fall. I try to set it up for you. I show you how to do this, and you just go do it wrong again.
Well, Josh, going back to one of the amendments that you don't care for, blood meal. So that's one of them that I use to make like my soil mix with. And what recently I've had happen is one of my plants was wanting more nitrogen than the rest, and I hadn't transplanted. So I just lightly dressed, not even like an eighth of a teaspoon dressing on a 1 gallon pot. Well, now I got nitrogen toxicity. And so that's the type of stuff that I'm trying to get people to kind of see and be aware of. Like, yeah, well, even though we're being organic, we can still apply too much of this stuff and have issues with it when we think that it's benefiting us.
And let's
I would
not
say I would dare go so far as to say most organic regenerative growers are putting too much shit in their stuff, and it comes out in the poor quality product. And most don't even know that it is poor quality. They go organics yields low, you know. And it's like, no, it doesn't. You're just putting too much shit in there, dude. The plants are the roots are suffocating. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, whatever. It's not about you. I've done the same thing. You know, they're suffocating in blood meal. They're getting tapped out with too much humic acid. You know, humic acid is really easy to overdo.
yeah.
I thought I could have swore I remember Dr. Faust talking one time, and so like his description of humic acid was it's the end product of digestion. Basically, it can't be broken down anymore. So we're, you know what I mean, like adding that into the soil is like it can build up over time. So if you're like repetitively adding, because I remember there was one guy promoting that for a while where he was like watering it in like every time, and I just remember Dr. Faust saying that it'll build up, you know, and then like anything, it can become a poison even or whatever. But I mean, he always seemed to have good results, but it was like I just remember seeing that and thinking that was crazy.
John,
I'm every 2 weeks with it. Humic and Volvic, aminios, they go in every fortnight, you know.
but you're not
Yeah, no.
heavy
Go ahead.
rate. You're just putting down a little bit every time, right?
Yeah, or the recommended amount. You know, I've got a product that I use, and I just use the recommended amount. And I've been doing it for 3 years now. I haven't suffered any problems. I don't do any testing or anything. I just rely on what the plants are looking like, really.
Because I mean, I understand also that humic and fulvic acid also act as an excellent buffer for nutrients. So having some there is a fantastic asset. But like anything, we're trying to like equalize, right? It's really like an equalizer as far as like balancing like calcium, potassium, magnesium, phosphorus, copper, iron, zinc, boron, all these traces, right? We're trying to get like each one tuned to the level it needs, not too much, not too little. Just like us, if we just ate fish 24/7, probably wouldn't feel too good. If we just ate salad, same thing. We need a diverse set of nutrients, and so do plants.
Unless it's ribeyes, bro, then you can go ribeyes only. I'm just joking. I said unless it's ribeyes. Your theory breaks down. I could go with ribeyes only for a long time.
You got to have a source of iron somewhere in there, right, Josh?
All right, I'll do ribeyes with you for next to forever. I'm down for that.
The humic and the Volvic are like a tool. I use it like a tool, and all that's doing is aiding the mining process of what's in the soil. So that way, I haven't got to add as much, you know, when I'm re-amending, because I'm relying on the humic and acids and everything else to be working on the rock dust and the things like that are in there that are going to be there for a long period of time and take a long period to break down. And then it's a delivery system, like a pickaxe for your microbes.
You know, that's a really brings up a really, you know, good topic. Maybe not to dissuade from this one, but as part of it, rock dust, you know, is amazing. That's where the nutrients are coming from. That's the base right there. That's the, in my mind. You guys correct me if I outstep. That's the base that the microbes are digging into, and reality is the more complex that base is, the better off you are. For instance, glacial rock dust is really cool. You know, mixing different types of rock dust from around different places is really cool because you get a diverse mineral load. Albeit that this is the big This is probably the one thing that I have fear of in all of organics. People, they say, you know, you compost, aren't you going to get pathogens and bugs? I fear heavy metals, right? Heavy metal buildup. And so you really have to not go overboard with the dusts, but also make sure that they're getting digested. You can simply add things such as molasses to the rock dust and then pre-digest them. The same thing we're talking about. Get them into a compost pile, get them pre-digested before you apply it to your base. But it really is the on-off switch for plant health, i.e., new flavor and potency. You know, flavor.
See,
It's really easy.
I've always believed rock dust. I've always believed in the micro macronutrients because a lot of people don't really talk about it. But even as humans, we need that to have those essential functions and homeostasis within our bodies. Same thing with the plants. But I know a lot of people like you, Josh, you know, the concern is heavy metals and the sources of where some of that rock dust is coming from, like high aluminum or different like cobalt or boron or something like that in it. Well, humic acid substances help stop the chelation of certain heavy metals so your plants won't take them up, which is a nice thing about using humic and fulvic acids. But you also have different biologies like pill bugs, isopods that will eat heavy metals in your soil if you give it time and to kind of break down and let them get in there. So I don't get overly concerned about some of the contaminants, especially doing, you know, like lower doses and not just like, oh, I'm going to dump like 10 cups in my one pot. No.
Right.
I can totally agree with everything you guys just said, and I can back that up with Dan Kittredge of the Bionutrient Food Association. Those guys, when they do soil amendments, first thing they do is a soil test. They take that soil test and then they apply nutrients to that soil, mostly rock dusts, to amend that soil up to put that equalizer band, like we were talking about, in place. Then they add biology. And now, using the native geologic soil profile and mostly nutrients from the native geologic soil profile, you unlock the nutrients and the availability and capability of the plants and the soil biology and the geologic profile all in one shot. So that's really how the system works, right? So when we go living soils into a grow tent, one of the best things we can do is add some rock dust to it. And again, like everything else, like you said, in moderation, don't overdo it. And I share the same concerns on heavy metals. It's part of why I started sourcing some of my stuff through Kiss Organics, because I just know that their ingredients are tested. You know, it's a long way to ship it. It's a little more expensive for me, but you know, it's one thing I like to keep clean. But my rock dust I do get from Rock Dust Local. I have a basalt, which I use because of its paramagnetic qualities and also its calcium and trace mineral content. And I also use a ruby granite, which is really high in a wide range of trace minerals, including silica. So that's my 30 cents on it.
Nice. I'd shout out. I don't know if you guys have heard of Crater Lake Minerals. They're here well, I'm in Washington. They're in Oregon. His shit, Jerry is the guy that does it. And he has a product called Jerry's Balls, where does exactly what I was saying. Throw some molasses in with it, and that's it. Metabolize again. But it's high in calcium and high in fulvic. This Crater Lake mineral is just naturally high, and that's exactly what we want as cannabis farmers, right? And he's never thrown anybody hot on heavy metals. You know, repeated cycle after cycle, and it's some really cool stuff. I've seen some really amazing plant growth adding only the Jerry's Balls, the molasses and mineral broken down, and it's like, holy shit, like in a pot, like that's all that's in there, and like they're really healthy, like damn. Remember calling them up, just like, bro, you got it, you know. So I'll shout them out because I think that I don't know the science of Crater Lake, but there's something deeper going on because of the way it's built. It's laying that there gets, you know. I'll stop there, but
I could go long deep into Crater Lake if you want.
Oh, okay, hell yeah, give it to us, bro. Give us the 5-10 minute.
Okay, so that's like a volcanic crater there, which is loaded with trace mineral nutrition. but more than that, that place has some really crazy energetic properties, and there are some very interesting paranormal legends around that place, and some very different missing 401 disappearances around there, including a guy who went missing in the middle of like wintertime, disappeared in like 5 feet of snow, and then showed up 5 years later, like pieces of him showed up like 10 miles deep in a place he never could have walked to. So uh, I'm not going to go off on the deep rails on it, but man, that place is wild. So yeah, pretty cool that the geologic profile from there is a super soil builder.
And I would say too, like the grain size or how finely ground the dust is going to matter. So like if you're looking at it and it's sand size or smaller, you know what I'm saying? Like you want it kind of dusty.
Micronized.
Yeah, there is that micronized with salt that you can get, and that stuff is really, it's like a really, really, really fine powder almost. So that's going to play a role in how active it is available.
Easy weathering of salt.
Yeah, and if you're building long-term soils, that's a great way to set yourself timeline wise for different layers of distribution. Do a really fine, do a lighter fine, do a harder grit, a larger size. You know, you can set multiple layers of it so that over time that soil profile develops and those microbiology unlock more and more nutrition from different layers and sizes. You can grow your soil.
That's why when I build my beds now, I just put down a slab of granite.
There you go.
I'm just joking. Yeah, I'm just joking. I'm in it for the long haul, bro.
Well, no, we talk about that though, but there's a talk on the Bionutrient Food Association in their audio archive library from, I forget what the guy was named, but he was a geologist, and he talks about the geologic, how fast soils can actually liberate nutrients. And like we think of geologic time as being millions of years, but it's actually seconds. It's crazy how fast it is. And he actually talked specifically about some testing they did with a maple tree set. It was on top of a like a lime rock shelf, and how much more calcium that maple syrup had as a result of where the geologic profile it was on. So there's a lot more to that if we tear
That's really, it's cool that you said that. I'll share some personal news. Last night, me and my wife bought a house in Minnesota. I live in Washington, and it's right on top of a bluff, right on top of rocks. I talked to the electrician today. He's like, it's solid fucking rock under there, and I know it's limestone. And so the whole day I've been very emotional thinking about this. You know, I'm moving my farm, and I'm like, man, what a different experience this is going to be to grow on a rock. Like, I don't know how much soil is there, but I'm going to be growing on a rock. You know.
You never got to buy calcium again.
Yeah, hopefully.
Cool. But congrats, Josh. That's a big move. I know you've been planning and thinking about it for a while, so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a family decision, really. You know, the grandparents, and coupled with this property is a once in a lifetime deal. You know, it's on the river, St. Croix River, that divides Wisconsin and Minnesota. It's got 200-acre access to hiking trails that are pretty much exclusively our access and conservation. And then it has a 200-year-old barn that's been restored. You know, like it's really a dream, you guys. I feel like embarrassed talking about it. Like, whatever. I got 60 days. I'll show you guys. I'll try to flip around. I got 60 days to break this motherfucker down.
So you're taking the greenhouses, huh?
Yeah, I'm gonna pack everything up I have 4 of these shipping containers, and I'm gonna pack it up all in there. I can't extract the value out of it. I've been with realtors and all these people, and I just can't extract the value. So it makes more sense to just throw it in a thing and ship it over. So that's what I'm going to do.
Oh yeah,
it sounds crazy. I'm not excited about it.
You got a lot of work ahead of you. Yeah, dude, movement's a lot, man, especially across like multiple states. It's a big ordeal.
The idea to grow on the rock like that, you know, when I realized that, I was like, holy shit, this is going to be really this is going to be a really cool chapter of my life, you know?
Yeah.
Well, just be aware of your first winter is going to be brutally cold in Minnesota.
I know. I actually lived there for 4 years with my wife. And I actually grew out there too. I grew veggies, had a whole acre of veggies and 3 greenhouses that size.
Nice.
So I have a little bit of experience, but I haven't grown weed out there. Yeah, so I'm excited. It's in the town we're in is a town of 700 people. It's a tiny, cool ass. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's going to feel really good. I hope, you know.
You know, video
Anyways, not to
that
distract
and
the
shit?
conversation. I just like couldn't help but say when you said that about the limestone, just like, yeah, bro, here
Yeah.
I come.
That's a contribution as far as I'm concerned, dude. That's awesome, man. Congratulations for you.
Well, isn't limestone too like where a lot of like aquifers form and stuff? So like the fact that we're on that isn't necessarily. I would imagine there's some form of a aquifer around by it, so water wouldn't be an issue.
Well, not only that, but the
It's a
energetics.
different river.
Not only that, but the energetics of limestone actually accumulate water and accumulate energy. Uh, Look at the pyramids. There's a whole bunch of interesting videos on all the geology of the pyramids actually helping draw energy to the pyramids, and part of whatever that they were doing as far as like energetics. So yeah, they think that they actually provided an energetic and a farming and a water component to the entire region. So
Interesting. Yeah, it's going to be really cool. Like, it's up on this little. It's not a bluff, but there is limestone cliffs to the left, to the right, and then we have this kind of like plateaued thing down to the river. I'm going to be paddleboarding every morning. Like that's my goal. You guys are going to be like, "What does this guy grow weed? He just paddleboards."
That was sweet, man.
Like a dream.
Anyway, sorry to distract the conversation for folks who
No,
are getting deep into technical. That was that. You
it
know what I
was.
mean?
And I was just gonna say, like, getting back to rock dust though, like, and the whole oxidation thing, like rock dust, a lot of them are like fully like oxidized, right? So like that's what the biology is trying to work at we talk about, oh, we release nutrients from this, right? But in a real sense, it's actually the bacteria that's putting energy into that little bit of nutrient, right, or whatever it is, calcium or whatever, and it has to take it from that oxidized state to a reduced state, and that's that energy that's going into it is what's making it plant available, and that's where like the microbial metabolites start to become important because it's more than just the acids or enzymes they're releasing to make it available to them. It's that whole nutrient cycling of the food web. So now that the bigger stuff eats it, poops it out, those things happen. And that's all part of what's making that plant available in a sense.
And then if we back step a little bit from that smaller picture of that and zoom out a little bit, the plant is the one supplying all the energy to all of that through photosynthetic energy.
Right on, dude.
Plants are in charge. I vote for plants for president.
That's your president. But that's that whole reaction that it's all an electron transfer. It all is like, and it's all going in one direction or the other. It's either going into it or it's coming out of it. And when things are getting oxidized, it's coming out of it. They're harvesting that energy. Whatever it is harvesting the energy from that.
Plants are literally antennas collecting energy, not just photon energy. We're finding it's more than photon energy. It's RF energy. It's all different spectrums they collect and utilize. And yeah, they're a transducer. They transduce energy into the soil and feed the biology with energy so they can extract nutrients. And they feed that back to the plants. It's their symbiotic relationship. If we all did that here on this planet, imagine what it would be.
Yeah. And kind of coming full circle on that whole like EH scale is like there is a chart available, and I know forget where I've seen it, but I have it somewhere even too, where it actually kind of lays out on the EH or redox oxidation redox scale of like where those soils lie based on their moisture content as well as other things. So that was kind of coming full circle on that as like, the amount of energy that's either getting pulled out of the soil or being put into the soil is kind of the way I always look at oxidation.
It's a really important way to look at. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Smart. I was going to add in. I think that the in and out is a really important way to look at it and think about it because um, you might not be pulling that much out depending on what you're doing. You know, maybe you're a hash farmer and you make hash and then you compost your plant material, buds and all, minus the trichomes, and then you put that compost back into the system. You've taken so very little out of there. In fact, you've just made the thing a little bit more complex. You know, you've pulled out the nutrients the plant needs and you put it back down with more carbon. You know, and like I don't even know what that I was thinking about that the other day because I at this point I'm putting very little into my garden. My what I call my version of living soil where it's connected to the ground. Like I feel like that is an important thing that gives me a lot of grace. Not that it's the end all be all, but I have a lot of grace to not fuck up because I have a bigger pot than anybody else.
I
You
have
know,
I have no, I'm not to interrupt you, but I have noticed a huge difference with pots on the soil on the ground in my greenhouse or outside versus pots not on regular soil. They throw a little root down and they can reach in and get extra nutrients and moisture. It makes a huge difference.
yeah, 100%. Anyways, I would love to connect with somebody super smart and do some sort of test where it's like, what are we pulling out when we harvest bud and we trim it and then we compost the stick stems, trim, you know what I mean? Versus what are we doing when we do hash? You know, you just have a little study on that would be really interesting to me. And it would be a good SOP to know like, okay, like, hello, don't put so much in. You know, you're just going for hash bud. Calm it down.
So
I
you're
have,
looking for basically what the nutrient density of the plant is when you're putting it back into the soil.
I've got a guy.
Oh,
We lost him.
He's
we
on
lost
the
him.
baby back.
Well, there's always been the law of return too, just to kind of go on that. And that's been something known in agriculture for a long time. Like you need to leave a certain amount behind in order, in order to keep that soil alive and move forward.
But
Yeah.
when it comes to like iron and stuff like that, how do you put some of those inputs back in that your plant doesn't have?
Well, isn't that where a lot of this it sounds like people are going wrong is like they're not putting back with like plant, sources. They're trying to supplement with, inputs in general, dry amendments, this, that, and you know, it's and that brings me to another thing. I don't hear of a lot of the struggle in the beds. You know what I mean? I hear more of the struggles of the organic in pot. So when is it again now the reamendments? My question again too is like say with the rock dust there, does that measure from reamendment to reamendment? Does that, is there can there be a buildup of just the rock salt, the rock dust in there? I mean, how does that measure in salt? My next question to that would be, are a lot of people when they reamendment, are they making the mistake of just testing a pot in general? Are they heaping it all together, mixing it with a fucking rototiller and then doing a slurry? And now we know what the whole pile needs. And again, third, it sounds like the third and main part of this is when disrupting the whole fucking symbiotic cycle of flipping the pot, reamendment, killing off kind of some of the bullshit to where again you don't see that in the beds. You know what I mean? There's not the flipping, the reamendment, it's all top dressing, whatever in the beds versus, you know what I mean? So is there a some way there most of them are messing up in the testing process? So like I said, are they measuring a pot that may have done well versus, a pot that struggled and now there's a lot of nutrients in there? You know what I mean? How do you properly test when you have multiple pots? You know what I mean? Is it heaping it up? Talk to me.
Well, I think a lot of it is when your companion plants or your cover crop, different plants will help break down or reamend different amendments, such as phosphorus and dandelions. Dandelions will help pull phosphorus out of the soil. So then when you're allowing it to break down and die off, you're then putting phosphorus back into the soil in more of an available form. Almost the same thing. Look at all of our nitrogen fixing plants, grabbing nitrogen, putting it from the air into the soil. So there's not a lot of reamending you really need to do when you have different plants that are making these other nutrients available versus a pot where you're basically adding amendments or nutrients, and you're not really growing with a cover crop to get that out of that soil to put it back in it. Only your super dynamic accumulator cannabis, and it's going to pull up everything it can out of that pot. So you're going to start running low on stuff, and that's why most of the time we want to reamend, is because we can't run it a couple cycles. There's not enough nutrients left in the pot for those reasons. So does that help some of your answers?
And can I elaborate a bit? So, in addition to that, like the bigger the soil profile you go in, the more sort of like a mass you have. It's sort of like thermal mass for some reason. It seems like the bigger the soil mass you're in, the bigger that like microbial web community and that exchange capability is. I think a big part of that might be something to do with the fungal communities, and learning more about those. We're finding that they actually are able to transmit nutrients, information, and all kinds of stuff at light speed, like instantaneously, at the behest of the plant, at the behest of a microbial community. It's really crazy the communication that's going on in those soils.
Do you know how I do it? Faith. I just throw it all in there and just assume that the plant will take what it needs. There's probably over what, when people say, don't be a moron, don't be a moron, you've got to have some stuff in there. You start starving stuff out, you're going to run into problems and deficiencies. In my experience, I just reamend. I don't go heavy. If I was going to use a product, I'll go for a lower dose. If it calls for 3 cups of a dry amendment mix, I'll probably throw 1 cup in. But I'm more relying on the compost teas and everything else, which is keeping the whole thing going. When I'm doing adding my once every fortnight, humic, volvic, aminios, the sugars, everything's going in that, and that's gonna essentially mine what. And I don't find I'm not having problems with the little pots if you've got a good microbe established first.
Do you think that you're feeding nutrients more or microbes to the soil or the plants more in doing the compost teas?
I'm feeding the microbes, because it is the sugars and everything that you're exciting the microbes. You're giving them a buzz almost. You're putting them on a sugar high, and they're just going to go out and shit and piss and go and binge on whatever you've just put in there. And along the way, they're going to be using your substrate and your rock dust as putting all these parts together. But a lot of it on my part is faith. That I just trust the process.
When we're doing what you call faith, dumping all these amendments in super soil, if we go heavy, we got to be concerned about how much nitrogen, because if we look at every amendment, how much source of nitrogen is in that amendment? Now we're accumulating several different sources of nitrogen, which, most of us are considering that's good, but now look at the rate of nitrogen we're adding, when really, if the biology and the plants are pulling from the air, we don't need that much nitrogen. So that's why a lot of us talk about, when we do these feedings, we'll do a light feeding and not like you say, 3 cups, maybe 1.5 cups. maybe a cup, maybe not a full 2 cups. You know, you're backing off a little bit from the original recommended amount. So you're not increasing those high possible
When I
toxicities.
But
when I say heavy, when I say I go heavy on the chopping and dropping, and the adding of things like malted barley and the things that are just going to provide the the benefits for the microbes. And that's really how I've always done it. You know, I started off with the worms, and the idea was, you know, I got it from Brown Guy 420. If you make sure your worms are good, your worms are fed and happy, the rest is going to fall into place. And that's all the way I've always been. Feed the worms. Make sure my worms are happy. So if it is just, you know, that have people saying, what are you putting under your avocados or mixing in with that? Nothing. The avocado's got plenty of nutrients and it's got an amazing nutrient profile. You shouldn't eat, you know, the avocado's got loads of goodness in it.
and if you look around all the really successful organic growers, what you'll hear echoing is they use really good worm castings or worms in their soils. And you got to understand the worm, the digestive tract of the worm is the equivalent of that of both a cow and a chicken. So you get the combination of a ruminant animal, which basically is the same as the digestive tract of the plant, the soil, and also that of the chicken in biology similarity. Plus, they drill holes in the soil, which makes easy root propagation. Plus, 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 plus.
So, hey, I would think of it like, so a little town that you or I live in, you know what I'm saying, is a certain size, right? And that's like the little pot. We're only going to get a certain amount of population happening here. Probably never going to have a subway. You know what I mean? An actual train subway. Might have the subway restaurant, but you get what I'm saying. But then you look at a city the size of like Chicago or something. I mean, now you got a very active public transit system. You got all this stuff going on that doesn't happen in a small town. And I think that's probably a good analogy to why the volume of the pot, you got a lot more activity that's going to be happening.
Yeah.
Smaller volume.
You got a large, I mean, we don't, you know, for instance, I'm in the 30 gallons and probably, you know, it's not even water, you know, I don't have an automated water system. I don't particularly care too much about water, you know, being, you know, making sure my soil, because, you know, the idea is you keep your organic soil. I like having little dried pockets and stuff in it because that's providing life for a different type of species of microorganisms. So you don't want one consistency across the board, which you'll get in a small pot. You don't get that in a big pot. You've got room for this community over here, room for that community over there. They like it a little bit airy on the outside. These ones like it really wet in the middle.
Sir, are you suggesting that diversity works in all natural ecosystems? That's ludicrous.
But, you know, it's how I roll. I'll just people say organic is so hard, you know, and they like think it's really complicated, but it isn't. It's easy. I can't do salts because it's too regimented and it's a you know it's a system that you have to follow and you can't. There's no gives or leeways. Whereas you go organic, it's pretty much nature's taken over. You're not the grower anymore. You don't have to really worry about it, and everything else is just gonna do itself, providing everything's there.
Keep the buffers up and it does the rest.
Yeah, I keep it stocked. I don't know. It's just a natural thing. Like I said, with our plants as well. We all know cannabis is one of the most adaptive plants. So when we're all thriving for one complete recipe or whatever, no matter pretty much what you throw it in, give it enough time, and it will start to thrive. It'll adapt. It's an adaptive plant. So what we consider a baseline for it is probably not. You know.
Yeah, what we really know is what we get growth responses with, right?
Yeah, and that can be different from plant to plant. So when I see a scientific test and they've just tested a few plants and a few, I'm like, that's just, there's a million different that could affect things, but you've just picked out one little couple of phenols or whatever.
You've got a
It's
snapshot of a tiny little piece of the picture, but you don't have the whole puzzle.
Yeah, I don't think we're supposed to really know. We're supposed to just sit here and try and figure it out because that's the whole addictive part of the game is this battle of trying to do better, always trying to achieve better. We'll never really achieve perfection because it's something we're always meant to be achieved or striving to get and to learn and things like that. And once you've learned it all, there's no point anymore.
Dude, if I
I
learned
think it's one of those things going on as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any such thing as learning at all. You know, because it seems like the more we learn, just the bigger the wider things become, the more we gotta learn, on top of that or whatever.
every question leads to 10 more, leads to 10 more, leads to 10 more. There's no learning at all. It's learning how little you know is kind of more what it is.
And I learned a little bit like this last couple of runs. I was having some issues on some of the plants, and yeah, I was looking back on things. I was trying to run a little leaner on inputs and trying to run that idea of it. And I did not have a proper mulch layer. So when I did have amendments down, they didn't have enough moisture to be able to cycle the nutrient. So in fact, I did starve the plants in a couple different ways. I wasn't there with the top truss, and I wasn't keeping the nutrient cycling happening in the soil. And on top of that, I let them dry out. A couple of them dried out to wilt, like where the leaves were all kind of wilted. So I came in like heart attack. Oh shit, like you get them rehydrated, but then they're never the same after that. And there's quite a few leaves that drop off, all that stuff. But that's why that's one of the reasons why this kind of shit's been on my head a little bit, is because that's been some of the shit I was dealing with there. And I was using a mulch layer so it's called a vermi mulch. It's basically it's a vermicompost that's just screened a little thicker. So it's got a bigger screening to it. And I was using that, and then my source kind of had a hiatus for a little bit, so I couldn't get it from November till like now. So I'm hoping that's going to change things around for my personal garden. It's like having that back in the mix and like having the ability to properly mulch. Because I'm not a big fan of putting straw down and shit like that. It just makes a big mess. I kind of fucked around with chia because I had this chia pet I got for Christmas. So I had some chia seeds I tried as a cover crop too, and it'll be all right, I guess.
So we have somebody in chat that he says he knows what his plant needs to grow, and that us organic growers, all we're doing is building soil and not building a plant. My question is, how does he know what his plant needs? Does the plant talk to him and say, hey, I need nitrogen or phosphorus, or is it telling you that? I mean, I'm trying to understand how some of these people are
The idea
thinking.
that we understand all how many inputs was it? It was like 8 or 9. This is all you need to grow a plant, and then it went to 12, and it went to 16. Now, what is it at 20, 29 or something like that now? Yeah, and it always kind of expands, right? So now I don't know. I mean, that whole argument's kind of silly to think, hubris, I guess, to think that we know exactly what it's going to be.
It was 84 and then 93 the last I checked, and I gave up because who cares at this point? Probably all the elements have a positive.
Well, it needs pretty much all essential elements, like even heavy metals traces, minute traces of heavy metals to work and function properly. So for me to say I know exactly what my plant needs to grow, no, because this cultivar might be different than this cultivar, and this might take up more nitrogen where this one wants more potassium or phosphorus or magnesium. And so I don't know what my plant needs. That's kind of why we build a soil and allow the plant to take up what it needs when it needs it.
Anyway,
So is there like a recipe for the one in, one out? The basically, what your plant's taking it out of. Can you? I'm a numbers guy. That's kind of where I would fuck up with, the rebuilding my soil. I'd be like, all right, yeah, I already have fucking 2 cubic feet. Recipe calls for, yeah, rinse, lather, and repeat. That would probably be the same. So is there a way that can you tell by plant size, yield, you know what I mean? Roughly, what that plant's using, taking out of the soil, is there kind of some, mathematical equations for this type
and
of
I
shit?
just want to throw a couple of cents in on the soil test because so there's a few different ways that soil gets tested, and it's very important because the one of the ways is the Malic 3, and that's going to tell you all the nutrients that possibly could become available, right? The other one's the saturated paste, which is going to tell you what is available when the soil has water in it, what becomes water soluble kind of thing. But the missing link in all that is what's happening in that biology and what's happening in the nutrient cycling. So you can have a lot of stuff in there, but if it's not cycling, it's not going to become soluble and becoming that. So it's a lot of when you're looking at that from what I was learning on it is you're looking at what's totally there and what can become available, and then you're trying to apply biology in a way to make that available for the plant. But no,
Well,
there might not be an exact measure, but what you're trying to shoot for is some of the Dr. Albrecht is one of the guys that laid out, what he did his study, he did his testing on it, and he kind of lays out some of the ranges that you want to be at with your cations of the soil. So
Yeah,
you
he laid
know, you're
out the chemistry basically, and then the biology does the interface.
and your plants, yeah, your plants will show you when they're deficient. But why are you trying to wait till they're deficient? You want them to stay healthy, right? That's why we put them in a soil mixture of every possible nutrient, micro, macro it can take up, and not just force feed through a salt regimen because you're missing a lot of the trace micro, macronutrients. And so if we can get that soil established, I can just water. I don't have to add teas. I don't have to add biology. The biology is already cooked in there when I cooked my soil and got it ready. So technically, I can just be a hydro grower and just add water to my soil and grow that way. I don't need to add anything else.
Right, but back to Eagle's question was how much to amend, right? So at the end of the day, if you really want to answer that question, what you got to do is test your soil, and then you know how much you've used. And there's a Kiss on Kiss
Does
Organic.
the average soil test tell you, not just, nutrient availability, what's in there, but does it also tell you like microbial count and bacteria and stuff like that? Because, this is the problem I'm having. Again, fucking the beds, fine. The system's never broke. Chain's good. When we fucking talk about, again, re-amending pots, we're talking about breaking up that cycle. Fucking half the time, it sounds like I'm willing to bet that you are running on what was left in the pot the last time. The buildup is indeed what you put in the pot this time. You know what I mean? Because you've broken that cycle, that's where the buildup's occurring. Because that jump, that delay, in, restarting the process. You know what I mean? Rebuilding the whole fucking community from fucking edge to edge, from top to bottom, and everything's back to, you know what I mean? That symbiosis, that fucking firing is just starting to happen in my mind. The moment you chop that plant, kick that plant over and go, ah, we're going to start this shit again. Except I'm going to kill off all the work you guys have done. Thank you very much. I'm going to stagnate this whole fucking process. Here's a bunch of new material. Let's all start again. And I think that's where the fucking process is fucking, you know what I mean? This is where it sounds like the struggle's happening. So how can, right off the, you know what I mean? How can we guarantee this cycle never breaks in the reamending process in pots? Because it doesn't seem to happen in beds, you know what I mean? How can we keep this going, in pots? Because a lot of us are in pots trying this. A lot of us aren't in beds.
I don't know that you can, man. Honestly, I've tried several different ways, and I don't know that you can.
You have to
Back
soil
on the
test.
size, and I fell into soil testing because of the problems I was having. But I was trying cover cropping, I was trying all this stuff, man, and you got to have inputs in there, barn or yeah.
At the end of the day, you hear John Kemp talk about agriculture. He started advancing eco agriculture, and that company is triumphing eco agriculture and regenerative agriculture on a scale and a level that's just unfathomable, right? And one of the things he always says in his podcast, we don't guess, we test. And that's important. If you really want to know how much to add, test the soil. Then you know how much is in the soil chemistry wise. You can make the chemistry adjustments and then try and keep that biology going. And the biology will balance with the chemistry if the chemistry balanced correctly from the beginning.
No.
Now, hold on. I'm not done. I'm not done. Now, that's that part. Okay. I know you don't like that answer. I don't either. I can't afford soil testing for every freaking pot or to remix all my pots and then send out tests and wait for tests to come back and get what you're saying. We want a practical application. So right now it's not available, but this year they are introducing plant sap testing on a local scale so you can do it on your own farm. I don't know how small that scale is going to be yet, but that is coming in the future. Probably in the next 5 years, that'll be available on our grow tent like scale. And we'll be able to plant sap test, and that tells us exactly where our plants are at. And we can test old leaf and new leaf tissue and determine where they were at, where they are at, and determine nutrient deficiencies before they're visibly available and correct for them with either soil amendments or foliar feeds. So those are some solutions that are sort of available and coming.
So my response, Eagle, is look at your larger bed. You're still going to have to re-amend if you're not adding biomass, if you're not chop and drop, if you're not putting the leaves back down into the bed. That's some of the difference. When you're doing pots, you can pull your leaves off. You can put them in the soil in the pot and let that kind of help re-amend. Those are some of the minimal ways to try to help re-amend. But even in a large bed, over a couple years, you're going to have to start re-amending some of the nutrients because it's going to start falling short. Some of like the intakes, like I was saying, phosphorus, if it's locked up and not available and you're not using stuff like dandelion or different other companion plants to get it up out of there, it's going to stay locked up in there. So that's some of why larger beds, because you have such a greater volume, you have these different diversity of plants, which brings the diversity of genetics. That's why the beds do so much better than a small pot to a 10-gallon pot. When you start getting into larger pots and you're adding some cover crop in it, well, you're doing a little bit better because of the volume of soil versus the smaller pot.
And Dan Kittredge talks about even outside when they re-amend soils, like they'll come through, they'll amend a farm, set it up, starts flourishing, everything's rocking. But every 10 years, we go back and we re-amend those rock dust and those other nutrients. We retest that soil every year, every fall, make sure the balance is still there. And then every 5 or 10 years, depending on where our soil tests are falling, we're going to re-amend that soil and keep it topped up and keep that balance there. So
I see, and like Gabe Brown up in North Dakota, he's got so much biomass built. He's not using any fertilizers. He's not adding anything anymore. He's got so much going on that with adding the cattle, the free range grazing chickens and other animals all over the land, he's not adding anything no more. He doesn't need to.
And you got to understand the context of what Gabe Brown is doing. Let's really tear that apart for a sec. That dude's working in North Dakota. Do you know how short that growing season is? He's got less than 90 days of season that isn't frozen. That short a season, and he's doing incredible things with soil. And you know what he talks about big time in all of his talks? Diversity of species. He's up to 13 the last I checked for cover crops.
All right. Now, where I was going to ask there is about, again, back to the soil testing and stuff like that. Again, the pot versus, again, the bed there you guys are talking about. 100% a lot of that problem, I guarantee, is the passing of nutrients via, the soil web there from one plant to another, equaling things out and helping keeping the bed going correctly. Now, again, when you're soil testing quickly, more cycles are happening way quicker than you can do, in pots than in the bed. So, in them tests, are they telling you, yeah, is there good bacteria, bad microbes? Again, you know what I mean? Is there good and bad? Can you tell me what the population of good and bad versus, the soil microbe bacteria state of the soil? And again, not just the nutrients, because I'm asking this is because I've said this a lot of times. We reflect the plants reflect us in a lot of ways. And the more and I've talked about this at one time, like the anxiety in humans, I'm starting to realize more and more. I believe that anxiety and stuff like that can be a mental issue, but I think more and over, I think it's starting to be. In my mind, I really think this is true. That it's a microbe or something that we've ingested, we've lived around a black mold, some type of shit like that. We've got enough of it in our body, especially even more so that I talked to Tim Blake, that we've got enough of it in our body. So when it hits its trigger, heat, whatever it is, it's sending a signal to protect itself, which gives us anxiety, which makes us want to get the fuck out of that environment or change whatever it is around us. So can this happen with soil? Can there be a bad microbe that says, you know what I mean? I'm not happy. I'm gonna fucking, spike the whole system. I'm using all this and then put your plant into a state where it doesn't want, this type of nutrient because it's not good for that microbe or bacteria. You know what I mean? It's defending itself in the soil somehow. Like, can that be a possibility? You know what I mean? Does that reflect in soil testing?
You just described the virus there, pretty much. Something that's going to come in and do bad things. We generally call them sort of viruses, and there is a cell process, but it's the symbiosis host relationship. But yeah, I would imagine there's bad shit everywhere. But the idea is when you're growing with organics and stuff, you put enough of the good shit in, there's going to out competition any of the bad stuff that might show up. So this is the other thing. I'm not too keen on the wild crafting and going outside into the environment and bringing stuff in, doing IMO collections. You're just asking for root aphids or root feeding nematodes or a bad bacteria. But when you buy a product that's been through a scientific lab and they microscoped it and counted the CFU colony forming units, you can pretty much know what's in your soil as opposed to outside. You're taking a chance with whatever's out there. But when you're doing it indoors or you've created that pot, you pretty much know what's going in there, and the strains of the stuff you're putting in there are going to pretty much out competition the bad stuff. That's why we're putting the good strains in there, so they're going to protect us against all the bad stuff that we do encounter.
I want to throw the caveat in there that you need good quality inoculants. You need to confirm that those are good quality inoculants.
Yeah, normally you'll see a plant response. You know, when you've got a good product, it normally shows. You know, they speak. The product speaks for themselves. There's a lot of fucking snake oil and everything else out there, but when you, that's why we like what we use, and you know, because we found what works for us in our systems. And
yeah, if you're noticing a growth response, then okay, you're getting something. If you're using a product and thinking you're getting something, you're not getting a growth response. Double check the product. Double check your application of the product. Maybe you didn't do it enough or correctly. You know, there's lots of stuff. Those inoculants are super powerful, man. I just did a series on regenerative cover cropping, and it's amazing when I forget the inoculants on my cover crop, and then I go back and hit them. In 3 days, they go like green, blue, like they turn into like an energetic component. You just can't imagine. It's so different.
I like it when you know you can go in and you can spray, you can foliar feed something like just an inoculant, say a bacillus and a trichoderma together with some amino acids and a little bit of sugars to give them a little bit of something to eat as well along the way. And you can see your plants just start praying, you know, not long after receipt, within 30 minutes, wow. And I look at these sort of things as like cheat codes, because it's all the stuff the plant's trying to get out of the soil, but you've just delivered an instant quick fix, like a Lucasade. It's giving the plant a Gatorade. Is giving them some, spraying some aminos and some bacteria and some trichoderma. And it's
That's
also to protect you against some of the pathogenic stuff like the powdery mildew and things like that as well.
that's why those foliar feeds are such a powerful synergistic stack. You can put the biology on the phytoplane, you can boost the nutrient of the plant, accelerate photosynthesis, and anytime you accelerate photosynthesis, you accelerate the total plant energy and therefore the amount of exudates that plant produces, and therefore you accelerate the biology in the soil, and therefore you accelerate dramatically the amount of nutrition that the soil feeds back to the plant.
I've
It's
heard
all
that
about that energy.
the
Saving,
trichoderma.
sorry, Eagle. It's the way I use the foliar feeds is I see that as you're just saving plant energy, and there's the plant's only got a limited amount of energy, whether it's tackling defenses, growing, photosynthesizing, processing, and everything else, and if you can get it to gain energy, you're just going to see gains. That's what it is. You'll get gains.
I've heard to be careful with the trichoderma that they can like overrun. No,
Trichoderma and bacillus are like the two top competitors for soil.
All you need. It's all you need. Bacillus and trichoderma. Well, especially the I can't pronounce the name of it. Alpha cans or something like that. That one pairs up nicely with the trichoderma, and you don't need no other, microbes. As far as I'm concerned, them two work hand in hand together and produce pretty much the whole pharmacy of everything you need.
You're not the only person that reports that. I hear that in a lot of different circles of growing.
I have a product from a greenhouse seed company, and you might disagree, think that they're a bit hype and everything. But if you ever actually look at the ingredients in their product, they're fucking bang on. With an all-in-one microbial product that's bio. It's fulvic, humic. It's got all the sugars, complex sugars, and everything else, carbohydrates. It's got the microbes in there. It's got the seaweed extract. It's got everything all in one, you know. And this is why I say, you know, if you want to go start doing organics and stuff, look at an all-in-one powder product, you know, a line like that, you know, because even as far as their grow and their bloom nutrients, it's everything I would be trying to source anyway. But they've managed to put it all together nicely. Yeah, that they've got a pretty much an 8-week life. So it's taken it 8 weeks to grow the average plant. If you've got a longer plant, you just give it a little extra top dressing on the 3rd week, the flower. But it can be that simple. You just one feeding and at the start of flow, or one when you put going into vegetative growth, you give it one grow feed, and it's water only, or your microbial product every 2 weeks. You know, and it's the same with the flower mix. And I would suggest that if anyone's, you know, they think it's difficult to start organics and it's really difficult, you can buy these kits. They do a starter kit. It's everything you need from start to finish in one go, and that'll get your foot in the door to where you think, oh, you know, I can go a little bit bigger next time. Then I can start adding a bigger pot, and then I can reuse my soil. You know, and you get your foot in the door with an all-in-one product. Not the bottles. I don't agree with the bottles because they can be hard work and you have to follow a regimen. But you get one of these all-in-one where you just water it in and it's just water only for the rest of the way.
Well, that's like some of the soils here, like Roots 707 or Fox Farm or some of them, Nature's Nectar of the God soils. It's kind of already blended. So, you know, so some of these people don't have to really buy all the amendments to mix theirs. It's already pre-made. Costa Maine's another good one that people can just buy and really just start watering their plants and not have to worry about, you know, doing a lot of additives or amendments.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's where I started, you know, with a bag soil that had a 6 week, that was organic soil that had a 6 weeks life. So you get your 6 weeks veg, then you pot it up, and you got 6 weeks. So then you just have to worry about the 2 weeks where you're going to be flushing anyway, you know. And it was that simple. You could buy a bag of soil from the hydro shop. It's all, you know, got all of. I was using BioBiz. You know, the only thing the problem with that is the consistency with them soils. You know, one bag will be different. You know, you could get one bag that's different to the next. So you got to find a brand that's pretty consistent if you want consistency. But
Well,
I find
no, I was just going to say that's kind of the problem that even making your super soil, the consistency, because different parts of the soil batch may not be mixed up enough.
yeah, I want
this
to.
is what once you've got one run under your belt, say a 4x4 tent, and you've got all them pots, you can then reclaim all that soil you've then used and make one bigger pot. And then you ain't got to worry about so much about your consistency because you've got your bigger pot. So you eliminate that, and you when you do it like that, is you end up growing soil.
Yeah, yeah. Couple things on that. One, that consistency thing with bag soils, I had huge problems with that, and I saw all through our forums, all over the place, many problems. You would get soil from a supplier, it would be great for a while, then they'd make a new batch and it would have an infestation of thrips or be imbalanced or be too hot or so that's part of why I went to like just buying the Pro Mix and the Kiss Organics Amendment stuff and mixing my own. At least I have consistent base to start from.
Yes.
So now I can go ahead and like add the earthworms and build that soil complexity and nutrient density out. I'm going to start adding more like oyster shell, crab shell, you know, build the complexity. But to start with something that's both diverse in nutrients that covers the full spectrum and has pretty much everything you need there is a great way to start. So I second that. There was something else I was going to say about that, but I lost my other head.
Well, since you forgot, I'll speak real quick. So even with down to earth amendments, you have to watch that they change their recipes on their amendments. So I've had 2 boxes of fishbone meal, And they have both read differently on the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And it's supposed to be fishbone meal, right? Should be the same all the way through. No, it depends on their sourcing and where they're getting some of their material to mix and make. So when you're even using down to earth amendments, you need to be aware that they are changing some of their recipes over time on you as well.
Oh, and let's drill one level deeper than that, because even the testing or labeling in the box isn't exactly what's in the box. It's like the minimum amount or maximum amount. I think it's minimum, but yeah, it might not be accurate. It might say there's 10% nitrogen in the box. It might have 15% nitrogen in it. Just has to have enough.
So do we clear that up for you, Eagle?
You can always do a good job.
It's tough, man. Like, the thing I learned from mixing soil was that your compost source can be a variable, and that's going to be a third of the mix right there. So when I say it's a variable, it could be a variable. It could be high in potassium, it could have a high level of magnesium. You just don't know, and they could be different. And that's why it's important to test the soil mix after you mix the compost in, because you're trying to balance to whatever compost you have to. So.
I had another question and I spaced it out there briefly. So, oh,
I like that you still say it's easy, I see, because I know I've had struggles with it, and it's like, I don't know, man. I think the difficulty part can come in when you're really trying to like run multiple cycles out of the same media, and then you're trying as you're doing the reamendments. If you're off just a little bit the first round, it's off a little bit more. The second round, it's off a little bit more. The third round, kind of thing. You know?
Yeah. When I built my 30 gallon pots, it took nearly a whole year before to settle in, and before I was like, oh, I don't even know if I've done the right thing. And but what I actually realised, I didn't add lime, so I didn't even pH my soil. You know, I used a lot of peat, a third lava rock, and a third finished compost. But generally, I turned my pots into worm beds. You know, and I don't have as much on my plate as what you did, Smolly, in your big warehouse or your barn. What you had, you know, as a lot to manage. If it's just one person, maybe you know, I've got my little 12 by 10 room, and you know, 8 pots, 30 gallon pots. It's easy to manage, and I don't really manage it. It manages itself. And as long as I do them things every time, when I've chopped down the majority of the stuff, I do the chop and drop. I make sure that mulch is on there. I've got that straw, and I'm just throwing down the barley, you know, just the good stuff what Coop talks about. Yeah. Just make sure it's all that living layer is alive on the top there. And I just find I can just neglect it, not even touch it if I don't really want to, let it go dry. I can overwater it, and it just does its thing. And I don't, you know, sometimes I run into it. I'll notice that something's out of whack. You know, I'll see a deficiency on a plant or whatever. Then I'm going to address that, and I'll look for, I'll single target that deficiency as it appears.
So
You know.
let's just peel that apart for a sec.
Hold on one second, because a deficiency doesn't necessarily mean it's not in the soil, though, right?
No, no. But you know, I'm obviously going to investigate it. I'm going to check. I'm going to put out a lump of soil. I'm going to check the pH. I'm going to check the EC, what's the saturated EC of it. And if that all seems to be all correct and everything else, and the plant is just showing general signs of deficiency, I'm going to target that and just hope that corrects it. And I'm going to see a response within the first, couple of weeks. See if that corrects it. That plant might take a shit, but I know for the next round, yeah, that's probably all going to blend in and come back. Just give it a little bit of time. And that's generally what I find a lot of the time as well, is I'm not re-amending. I'm just letting the plant, the pot, like Eagle says, where you just leaving them to one side. Well, well, the point of that is the worms are doing all the work. There's not a big plants in there taking a draw out of it. So whilst I've not got that big plants growing in that pot, for that month that I've pulled it to one side, all them worms and all the microbes, I'm still putting barley down, I'm still watering it, and and everything else. That's all just building up. So when I now bring it back in, it's got an abundance of stuff that's accumulated in there, ready, plant available to go. And that's generally what I look at. I'm not looking at these pots lasting for 3 years, even though they have lasted for 3 years. I'm trying to get the 8 weeks flowering out of it. Make sure there's enough in there for the 8 weeks of flowering. So I'm probably running my EC is actually quite high because I can't read it. My EC meter just goes 9999 error. Yeah, so there's no point in. But as far as if I see a lockout or anything like that, I'm going to investigate the pH or whatever. Maybe it is a fact of if it's a pH, I'm going to add calcium. And it's probably going to bring it all back.
What I was going to bounce around back to is how the environment can actually play a role in that too. So if the room temperature is low or something, you know what I'm saying? Like there's other factors other than, so to just say, hey, I see something going on with the plant and I'm going to diagnose it as this nutrient single thing that it's deficient in, and I'm going to somehow provide it that thing and it's going to pop back from it, I think can be a bit of a fairy tale and some of that stuff, because there's a whole complexity beyond that than just adding that thing that you think is missing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Smiley. I think not only is it a fairy tale, but I think it's complete hubris to think that, because the more we learn, the more we find out. One and two, let's peel that onion apart for a second, because you talked about how you treat your pots. You leave debris and you leave. It sounds like you treat your pots more like a living soil and more like where you're actually saving the material with the soil, right? So there's a huge difference there. You're actually leaving not only a microbial community in place, but you're also leaving homes for those microbial communities, even if they're not active, to sit there and reserve until environmental conditions fit them again and they can become active again. So that's a really brilliant system you've got there. I admire that a lot.
I've always that, like I said, I've got the 8 pots. I might see one of them is just not, the plants are not looking as good as the other ones. They've not got the vigor and everything else. So I'll just pull that pot out to the side and I'll leave it there. I'll let it dry back. I'll give it a good watering and I'll just, put down some avocados. I'll check to see how the worms, give the avocado a couple of days on there and see how many actual worms turn up to it is a good gauge of how alive the pot is. And as long as I can see everything rocking, thriving back, I might throw a cover crop down and I'll do a chop and drop before I put it back in. But that's basically what I'll do is I'll chop that down, make sure all the straw and everything's nice on there. Just make sure that's good how you would look at it. Then I'll throw the cover crop all into that mulch, wait for it all to sprout out and chop up, and chop it down, give it a little haircut, then just make way for the next one. But I amend a little bit when I go into my pots because I'm bringing out from a veg tent in it. Let's see. Right. Now, the system I've now got myself into is I'm vegging up in one of these, and I've cut in the bottom there with a hole punch. It's just saturated with holes. So this is now just coming in and sitting into my bed, but I'm putting a little bit of what you would say dry amendment bloom underneath it. So it's just going to, and a little bit of trichoderma and everything else, and it's just going to work its way into that as it goes. So it's almost like, and I'm also going to feed this pot as it goes into flower with the dry amendment mix, and it just seems to work out really well. You know, I get a dry back on these every day, so I go in and water these every single day now from it, and they get dry. But the tap roots and everything else that are coming out of the bottom are just going straight into the bed and anchoring it down. For some reason, it just seems to be working out for me. Like I said, I haven't run into a problem yet. You know, I've got different pots in there as well. I thought, you know, I'd even I can't say there's a difference between the ones with the lava rock in and the ones without lots of aeration. Just, you know, just with compost. You know, there's not really, the lava rock seems that I do like them pots better because they hold the shape. You know, they don't dry back and peel away because they're so heavy. But, yeah, I don't know. I just I feel blessed and almost lucky because I used to. You know, I'm touching wood now, and I've been 3 years on these pots, and everything's just performed. And it was like I put the time and the effort into setting it up, and like I said, I just trust the process. I haven't tested anything. I just make sure it's got enough shit when it goes into the cycle it needs. So when it's going, my beds also as well. I don't veg in them, so they're not seeing no nitrogen heavy foods in there either. No, they're only done on maybe 2 veg in 3 years, and I've probably had about 18 runs in there. 18 flower, turned it around 18 times on the flower.
That's another question I wanted to ask you guys is how much, you know, nitrogen does the cannabis plant itself absorb, you know, from the atmosphere, from the air itself? Is there not enough in the air for the plant? And then it sources out of, you know, the soil. How much does it actually pull out of the air? And why does it actually need a meteorary, if you will? You know what I mean? It's one of these cover crops to pull it out of the air and put it in the soil for it. Is it not capable?
Well,
No, it's
this is
capable. It's totally capable, man.
Right. I mean, well,
Carbon would be the answer to your question. That's the number one thing it's going to be pulling out of the air. But there's things that it can't source from the air, like calcium isn't going to be necessarily.
nitrogen was the in particular molecule or input that I was asking about there. Is it because nitrogen was the main thing we were talking about tonight? Does it not pull? Is it not incapable of pulling exactly what it needs out of the air? Which is like again, we're talking about CO2, an ever-ending abundant source. If you know,
And that's the form of nitrogen, right? So in the air, it's in a form that it's not able to access. So that's where the biology would have to come play a role, and that's what that means. That nitrogen fixing bacteria, or that's what they're doing, is they're changing the form of the nitrogen into something that's becoming usable from the atmosphere.
Yeah, and they should be both on the leaf surface and on the root surface, fixing nitrogen from both the soil and the leaves. You want both, really. And in being on that leaf surface, they're also defending that leaf surface back to that point before. You have good biology in place, bad biology can't take a hold because good biology already has a home and defends that territory.
that would be great if the plant was self-sufficient, you know, and the only thing it ever needed was to be watered, no matter, you know, obviously it's going to need some nutrition, but there's a process to everything, you know. there's an order, an actual order of the way things broke down to the smaller, and it gets smaller and it gets smaller. And it's a chain, and there's a hierarchy, and there's something in control of it all. So a lot of the time, I don't think it even really matters what we do a lot of the time, because something else is going to take charge and overrule what you've done that you can't see, and is you'll never, it's crazy. I think a lot of that, a lot of the time, is sometimes why I'm so blessed with, like I said, I don't test. I'm really lazy. I just throw shit in, almost willy nilly, yeah, and I get good results. But I feel that I put that thought into it already, that it doesn't matter because it's going to be good. It's going to turn out good. I'm already envisioned that it's already done. It's a done deal. And I'm putting that out there, which I feel is a big part of whether you're going to achieve good results with what you're doing. Is it's in no matter what you do, whether it's growing plants, whether it's running a marathon, or the power of that thought and suggestion and everything else is, especially when you're working with organics and Mother Nature, and you're relying on these things to do stuff for you. Yeah.
Well, look at years ago, Subcool. He had down by his charity garden a plant come up. Never watered it, never fed it any nutrients, never got the super soil, and how healthy it grew. Look at all the feral hemp plants that are growing across the country here in the US that nobody's feeding them, nobody's watering them, and look how healthy and huge they're growing. Some of them may not have all the nutrients that they need, but they're still producing and creating seed and pollen and able to still reproduce. So something's happening there, that the plant is, it's such a hardy plant that whatever conditions, I mean, look at um, where the Caucasus Mountains are, and look at how the Kush grew in those regions, and look at the ruderalis in Siberia. Look at those conditions. Look at how these plants have gone through different environments so harsh. And look at, if you follow PAK, PAK on Instagram or YouTube, he's over in the Middle East and he's showing growing these fucking huge plants and fucking like sand, and the way he's producing. I mean, these plants are so resilient that even if we don't give them what they need, somehow the biology is getting it to them. They're able to produce and still thrive in conditions that we wouldn't even think they would thrive in. I mean, if that was in our backyard, we'd fucking probably kill it, chop it down. Oh, that ain't a healthy plant. Like, but they're so resilient.
And to both you guys' point, we can call in the power of the universe or the consciousness or whatever you want to call that. There's something about that. When we interact with plants, we call that energy to plants. We put our energy and our heart into that, they react to that. We're a conscious being, plants are conscious being, animals are conscious being, and all the biology are conscious, including the fungi, believe it or not. I'm sure we'll be able to scientifically prove that as time goes on. But for now, lots of those pieces are coming out to be true. So
light is conscious.
Yes.
So everything is aware that that we're observing it, and it can act differently to it. Sometimes when they say plants are growing, and we come in the room in the morning after the plants have been alone all night, not being looked at. They've been doing their own thing. It's like, is that because we're not watching them that they're growing more, or is it because it's dark and they're just reaching for the light? Who knows? Is there does your light actually perform better whilst you're watching it? These are the types of questions. If you sit in your grow and you're watching your plants all the time, they're naturally going to perform better because you're providing that observer part of the situation.
And this all leads us back to what Eagle always talks about here, doesn't it? Like, how interacting with plants really helps you heal through like trauma and helps you evolve as a human being. Man, it's like it's a two-way street. And hey, holy shit, just like the rest of nature, it's a symbiotic relationship. Imagine that.
I would imagine so. We're gonna it's starting to unravel all these sort of questions, the unseen, the radio or the frequencies that everything's frequency ranges, everything's vibrating and resonating, and we're starting to get some real sort of like insight into these things as we've just leveled up. We can see a little bit further, so we're on a new level of consciousness at the moment because new things have been discovered and been opened. Our possibilities have been brought up. It's the new. There's always something new. Oh, I love it. It's addictive. Just all the new shit.
Well, I think that's why a lot of us enjoy organics, living organics, learning about the physiology of the plant and the soil biology. And like, there's so much of this rabbit hole that we can go down and learn just to understand the plant. I mean, like, if you don't want to learn it, you don't have to. But most of us want to be weed nerds and actually go down that rabbit hole and learn this information so we can chat like amongst us, like this panel, and talk with the people in chat about everything that all of us have learned. And it's great to share that information because so many people want to hear this information or the stuff that we all talk about on the panel. And it's like Eagle and I were talking before the show. Eagle and I grew up with people before the Grow Tube Roundtable. We grew up with people like Jay the Grow Pro and Green Clouds and a couple other people that were doing shows before the Round Tube was. And like those people are around no more. And so for like me and Eagle and Smiley and Iceni and Carlton, like all of us right now here in this moment, like we're not always going to be here to put out the information. And so if we're able to get it out and share it when we can, why we can, man, share as much information as you guys can.
I'm always going to be.
I shared a good bit this evening. And again, you guys have made me grow, expand, and stretch in tonight in knowledge. Thank you guys for letting me run in your organic circle, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? If you're running with the big boys, you're only forced to learn, right? You either learn or get run over, and I prefer to learn. And you guys drag me along and teaching me a little bit more every week, and I'm a ton of gratitude for you guys, and more than you guys know. I appreciate. I seen Mr. Dutch Blooms. Dutch. Josh was a. I forgot. Well, I invited him the first time and gave him pretty much an open invitation, but I did not know he was coming today. But I do appreciate the pop in. Always a ton of knowledge he drops. I seen you as well. I appreciate. I seen he was officially our first guest of the wormhole series. Now from this forth, I think we are gonna start. Is that the plan, guys? To have a guest per episode now?
Well, the talk of the background is some pretty big guests coming on right away. And so, yeah, I think people really need to maybe hear some names that possibly might be coming up in the lineup because if they may want to tune into some of those episodes.
Well, Chris Trump will be here for the next episode. That's for sure. So he'll be here.
What? Who?
Mr. Trump.
You're
Hey,
on it.
all our KNF questions.
So all of our KNF, Judd, Dom,
All that.
growers,
Oh,
we want you here.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and yeah. Oh, and
list of possibilities who will come on. We just see Joshua Steensland's in chat. I just asked him in chat if he'd like to pop in for an episode. Another great source of organic knowledge. But you're right. Yeah, we're working on some stuff.
also,
Talking about running multiple rounds, Josh would be a great input on that.
Oh yeah, I used to watch Josh when I was first learning the when no till or was becoming a thing. You know, Brown Guy and Joshua Steensland and Chris Trump. They were the they were pretty much the main sources of all the.
Would
the
you guys
knowledge.
let me talk to Brown Guy? I still have a line to Brown Guy. If you guys would like source it.
It's been years since he's really done anything.
I didn't
Yeah.
hear him
He's
not
not growing, I don't think, is he?
here too, though.
He's doing
Don't
the
know.
oils and whatnot, the extractions.
Yep.
I think
Still does the extractions. I still see him post some of that stuff, but
I
he don't
seen him
post a
doing
lot of
something else
grow.
the other day, though. I'm pretty sure I caught something that he's maybe doing something different. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head.
Good things. Good things
Always
ahead.
learning and changing.
Oh, boys. Tell them where they can find you and what you guys got it going. Who wants to start it off? We'll start out with the guest. Mr. Icini, you want to tell them where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me here most of the time on Eagle Show. Yeah, you in the chat rooms, or you can just find me on Instagram if you look hard enough. That's it.
Well, guess we're going in alphabetical order. Miss Medically Fit.
You find me on YouTube or on Instagram. That's about the two places I only engage on social media.
That's Smiley. Come on, I can't be the only one. Knows.
Smiley's going on Instagram or Smiley's.angels on Instagram. And we got smileysangels.net is the website.
and yeah, I'm on YouTube and Instagram. The Pharmacy Seeds Network on YouTube. Reboot Agriculture on Instagram. Also on Twitter, Reboot Agricult1.
You can find me right here talking with a bunch of cool fucking people all the time. So thank you guys for hanging out. Looking forward to the next episode. For me personally, you'll see me nothing scheduled till Monday. So I'll see you Monday night in the Weed Nerd World. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do save lives. And with that, we are out of here, fellas. Thank you so much.